Good afternoon and welcome to the ISO Board of Governors General Session Meeting. Please note that today's meeting is being recorded and all attendees are currently in a listen-only mode. There will be opportunity for public comment in today's call. If you'd like to make a public comment on any item, you can please press the raise hand icon on Zoom, or if you are dialed into the phone-only line, you can press #2 on your telephone keypad to enter the comment queue. With that, I'll now go ahead and turn the call over to ISO Board of Governors Chair Jan Shorey.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone to the October 4th meeting of the ISO Board of Governors. We look like we have a good turnout for this meeting, so I'm pleased that we have so many attendees. With that, I'd like to just turn it over to our Corporate Secretary, Roger Collington, for the roll call.
Thank you, Chair Shorey, and we'll start with you. Chair Shorey?
Here.
Vice Chair Borenstein?
Here.
Governor Edo?
Here.
Governor Galitova?
Here.
And Governor Leslie?
Here.
We are all present and accounted for. We have a quorum. We may proceed.
Great. Thank you, Roger. The next item up on the agenda is the opportunity for general public comment for items which are not on the agenda. I know we have a number of people that are here today to speak to us in connection with agenda item number 5. So if you would hold your comments until we get to agenda number 5, but anyone else who has a general item that you would like to bring up with us, operator, can you help us out and see if anyone would like to comment?
If you'd like to speak under general public comment, please press the raise hand icon on Zoom or #2 on the phone. Not seeing any comments in the queue at this time.
Great, thanks for your help. With that, we will move on to approval of the minutes. I'll turn it back over to Roger for the minutes.
Thank you, Chair Shorey. Can I have a motion to approve the July 17, 2024 general session minutes?
So moved.
I think Angelino. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, and I'll go ahead and take the vote. Vice Chair Borenstein, your vote.
Aye.
Governor Edo.
Aye.
Governor Galitova.
Aye.
Governor Leslie.
Aye.
And Chair Shorey.
Aye.
Great. The motion passes. Thank you, governors.
Great. Thank you.
Back to you, Jan.
Oh, thank you very much. It's time for our CEO report, and many of you listening in are probably aware that we did have our joint meeting with the governing body last week, so we did have a CEO report there, but I want to give Elliot, our CEO, the opportunity to review anything or any news we should be tuned into since last week.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair Shorey and Vice Chair Borenstein and governors. It's a pleasure to be with you and all our partners this afternoon. I did want to highlight just a few additional elements from my September 18, 2024 CEO report. Of course, there were some of us who've learned now the hard way multiple summers that summer is starting to have a tendency to trend into the fall. I know for those of us in California and in the desert Southwest, another bout of very, very hot temperatures here into the month of October. So we remain diligently focused on reliability. But looking back on the summer in general, it was another period of a number of significantly challenging moments, both in July and in August and into early September. But in general, as I think folks are aware, the grid has held up very well. A couple of new records, a new WEC-wide record, 168,000 megawatts back on July 10th. The CAISO peaked across the summer on September 5th at 48,323 megawatts right around 5 o'clock. But fortunately, through all the advanced planning, the significant new generation on our system, we're now over 9,000 megawatts of battery storage on our grid. Excellent overall performance by our aggregate fleet, and all of the outreach and coordination with the state agencies and the utilities, both within California and across the West. The bulk grid has remained sufficient and been able to very successfully keep the lights on across the summer 2024. Of course, we'll get through this week and hopefully things will finally start to turn. And I do like to point out to note, folks, it is nice to have not had to call a flex alert since 2022, which is always, in my measure, a good indicator of progress. So thanks to everybody for all the work and all the coordination in getting us so far through another challenging set of months without any interruptions of service. Of course, earlier this week, we were very pleased to receive a very positive ruling from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, a 5-0 vote with a very clean ruling on our interconnection process enhancements proposal. I think all of you know we have been working on this diligently for a significant period of time. It's been a major stakeholder effort, lots of input, lots of opinions, built on a sort of overarching approach to greater power and transmission coordination and the integration of interconnection queuing and procurement as one overall set of gearing. So we were very pleased to get that ruling. I will acknowledge, as we have in all of our public messaging, you know, there were a lot of different opinions. There's a lot of change here, really value on all that input, but we do think this is an important step forward, and we will closely monitor this progress as we move into the next frame and start processing cluster 15, and as the order itself requires, make sure that things are working as according to plan. I just wanted to reiterate here, as I said, we are, of course, when we turn to our market participants, again, very excited to have Black Hills Corporation, South Dakota, and Wyoming Electric Utility subsidiaries joining the ISO's Western Energy Imbalance Market over here in the next couple of years. Also very excited to have BHE Montana, who's already scheduled to join the WEIM in 2026, indicating that they'll also be moving forward with an EDAM commitment. So really wonderful to see the broader market footprint continuing to grow. And I will note, as I did in see or put, that we are continuing to work on EDAM implementation. Things I think are going very well with both PacifiCorp and Portland General in preparation for their 2026 launches. Wanted to make sure it was noted that back on July 31st, 2 months after submitting our requested tariff provisions to FERC, we did receive approval of cost verified bidding above the soft energy bid cap. And we were able to put that into production right after it was approved in August. I think we've noted, I think we've wanted to just continue to emphasize this was a really, I think, successful demonstration of being able to move effectively, inclusively with our stakeholders and getting a key piece of market design reform in place efficiently and effectively. So thanks to all the folks, particularly at the RIF and the stakeholders across the West who helped us get that approved and into production. Just one other element on transmission, as noted, in July, at the end of July, we also released an update of our 20-year transmission outlook. The new iteration now extends out to 2045 with updated load and resource projections in cooperation with the CEC and the CPUC. Of course, one of the biggest changes in the 2020 in the new 2045 outlook is the inclusion of a significant amount of additional offshore wind. The overall amount of offshore wind doubled from 10 gigawatts to 20 gigawatts in the new update. It's particularly in the North Coast area, moving from 4,000 megawatts to 14,700 megawatts. That's a significant increase in anticipated capacity. There were also associated increases in our cost estimates. Of course, those cost estimates are exactly that. They're estimates. We will continue to refine and iterate with the regulatory and utility community as other details of that resource development comes into play. But it's nice to have been able to update that look on the broad challenges facing the California electricity grid in the 20 years ahead. I just wanted to close by saying I really appreciated last week in Phoenix at the joint session, the briefing from the Governance Pathways Initiative. I think it was helpful to get a chance just right on the heels of the release of their 133-page draft, which I think folks are still digesting and understanding. I really appreciate the energy and focus of that group. And of course, they will continue to solicit additional feedback and input from their stakeholders across the month of October, and we'll continue to stay engaged in support role for that effort. And then just finally, we are just a few weeks away from our 2024 Stakeholder Symposium on October 29th and 30th. Really excited about the agenda for that, including an update on pathways, an innovative discussion on transmission and market evolution in the West, as well as a panel on some of the barriers and opportunities associated with load flexibility in California and the broader West. The registration is actually still open. Looking forward to a robust attendance, and I think the welcoming reception on October 29th should be a really nice moment as we celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the Western Energy Imbalance Market. So that concludes my update for today. Just a huge appreciation, as always, to all of you and to all of our stakeholders who've been helping us continue to make progress on a lot of different fronts. Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot. Roger, are you supposed to be introducing Rob or me? I'll go ahead and do it. I think our next item up, and it's a very logical transition in light of Elliot's comments about the 10-year anniversary of the WEIM. We have our usual report from our governing body chair, Rob Kanzioka, but oh, there he is. Okay. Go for it, Rob.
Thank you. Shorey, Vice Chair Bornstein, Board of Governors, good afternoon. I'd like to start off reporting that since our meeting last week, it's still hot. Forecast has continued hot. I don't believe the forecasters any longer. All I will say is the gift of summer just keeps on giving. I'd like to report out on three things, and I had a chance to touch on these a little bit, but just to reinforce, at our meeting, we had a presentation by the governing body market expert on bid cost recovery payments. And at one time, if you recall, there was potential of seeing a approval item, a decisional item on bid cost recovery. We took the opportunity to get into and establish good foundation so we understand the mechanics of bid cost recovery and why they are there. It was a good primer. Materials available if there's any interest. I suspect that Governor Bornstein might find it a little elementary, but we found it to be valuable. The second item I'd like to touch on is during our meeting, we had a panel of Western utility experts, and they joined us to show their insights on key issues. And it was a pretty diverse group. We had an IOU represented. We had a generation BA only entity represented. We had a large public power, and we also had co-ops represented. And the takeaway is twofold. We heard some pretty consistent thoughts on the value of the emergency transfer assistance. And if you recall, this is something that we approved when we approved the resource efficiency enhancements. And this has turned out to be a very appreciative and functional element. And there was a lot of debate whether we should be doing that. And it's turned out to have a very positive outcome. And I thought you'd appreciate knowing that it is being used and it is useful. And then lastly, I'd like to touch on something which is not a governing body issue, but is a WEIM issue. Is last week, the Regional Issues Forum had a meeting, and on their agenda, they were addressing congestion revenue rights. And they did this through a panel session, and the basic approach and subject was to help demystify CRR. And it has gotten a lot of positive feedback and good coverage. I think it's gone a long ways to educating the West on what CRRs are, how they work, and in the flow. And I think that there'll probably be more on this as we move forward in time, because more probably needs to be done in this area in terms of education. That's my report. I'll take any questions if you have any.
Great. Thank you, Rob. That was very thorough. Does anyone on the board have any questions for Rob, the governing body? Nope. Okay. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today. Appreciate it. I realized I forgot to ask if anybody had any questions or comments for Elliot at the end of his report. Did anybody have anything? Sorry, Elliot, I forgot to do that at the time. Okay, well, in that case, we will move along to agenda item number 5, which is today's main event. I think it's fair to characterize it that way. We are going to be talking about the SWIP North projects participating transmission owner application, which has been submitted to us by Great Basin. We've received a number of public comment letters on this item, so I'll turn it over to Roger. For the record, I'd like you to enter those documents into the record of this meeting.
Great, thank you, Chair Shorey. Yes, so on agenda item number 5, we received the following public comment letters that have been provided to the board. And there's Diana Nielsen's comment letter, Minidoka Pilgrimage Planning Committee comment letter, Star Lake permittees, which is signed by 7 of the permittees for Star Lake, and that has been submitted. And Idaho Power has submitted a comment letter. And as I noted, for the record, each of those have been provided to the board.
Good, thank you very much. And I just wanted to indicate those are now, they will be part of the formal decision here today. So with that, I think it's time to turn it over to Neil Miller, who is our Vice President of Infrastructure and Operations Planning, for an introduction to the topic.
Thank you, Chair Shorey, and thank you, and appreciate the chance to speak today. So this afternoon, I'll be introducing Deb Levine, our Executive Director of Infrastructure Contracts and Management, to present 2 decision items that will continue to advance the ISO's participation in obtaining scheduling rights extending to southern Idaho via the SWIP North Transmission Project. The capacity will enable the ISO to meet the CPUC's integrated resource planning direction to the ISO, calling for about just over 1,000 megawatts of access to Idaho wind in the 2024-2025 transmission planning cycle. The line, of course, will also improve overall Western interconnectedness and will provide benefits beyond those of accessing out-of-state resources. But the out-of-state resources, of course, have been the focus that was driving our participation. Before I introduce Deb, I wanted to make just a few opening comments. You will recall that the Board of Governors conditionally approved an addendum to the 22-23 transmission plan, identifying the need to access capacity to Idaho that enabled our participation in the SWIP North project to move forward. Unlike a project directly assigned to an incumbent transmission owner under the transmission control agreement. Oh, I'm getting a fair bit of echo. Is it just me?
I think it might be Debbie. It could be.
Oh, thank you. Just thought I'd check. Unlike a project directly assigned to an incumbent transmission owner under the transmission control agreement, this did not move the project straight to execution, as I'd indicated at that time. The decisions Deb is presenting today for your approval continue to advance the project in the ISO's participation based on the conditions set out in the resolution approved in December 2023, with one modification also being sought to those original conditions. As was announced back in April, the Department of Energy first announced and then since put in place an arrangement with Great Basin Transmission North, the affiliate of Great Basin Transmission, for a capacity contract. This is a bridging mechanism recognizing that the Idaho arrangements and subsequent regulatory process with the Idaho Public Utilities Commission has taken longer than originally estimated. Also, as I set out in December, and as Deb will review, the approval sought today will enable ISO management to execute an agreement with Great Basin Transmission for ISO's participation that must subsequently be filed with FERC for approval. Only after that approval does the ISO have cost responsibility, including any responsibility for cancellation costs, should the ISO subsequently withdraw from the project. So I wanted to be clear about where we are at in that process. I also want to thank LS Power for the progress they've made in advancing the project to this date, Idaho Power for their continued collaboration, and Jeff Dennison, the Department of Energy, for the DOE participation in the support of the SWIP North project, allowing it to accelerate its construction. So thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Deb to walk through the presentation and decision items.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Neil. Good afternoon, governors. As Neil just said, I'm here today to talk about the decision changes that we would like for the SWIP North project, along with accepting Great Basin as a participating transmission owner. Next slide, please. So in December of 2023, there were 4 conditions you put on the approval of the SWIP North project. One was Idaho Power receiving approval from their Public Utilities Commission by September 30th of 2024. The second one was reaffirming the need for Idaho Wind in the 24-25 portfolio decision. Third was Great Basin needed to declare its intent to become a participating TO. And lastly, FERC acceptance of the transmission owner tariff and transmission revenue requirement rate structure that comes much closer to when the line is actually energized. Next slide, please. So what's changed since December 2023? As Neil just noted, the Department of Energy has gone ahead and stepped in and signed a facilitation agreement to fund Idaho's potential share of 22.831% to allow Great Basin to commence the project sooner. Idaho Power and Great Basin are still in discussions regarding their rights to the northbound portion of the line. But at this point in time, Idaho Power has not filed with the Public Utilities Commission their request to be a part of the SWIP North project. And therefore, we don't have that approval that was required by September of 2023. However, with respect to the other 2 items, the CPUC did confirm the need for Idaho Wind in the 24-25 transmission planning process, and Great Basin submitted its application to become a participating TO by July 1st as required. Next slide, please. So just to give you an overview of the Southwest Intertie project, what ends up happening is that currently today, the ISO has already an interconnection at Harry Allen, which is the second box from the bottom. And ILS Power already has transmission rights on SWIP South. So they've got rights all the way up to Robinson Summit. And it's between Robinson Summit and Midpoint that the SWIP North project is going to be built. It's a 500 kV transmission line with phase shifting transformers and shunt capacitors at Robinson Summit. And there'll be series compensation that is required in both segments of the line, both SWIP North and SWIP South. WEC has already approved the path rating of this project, which is unusual at this point. Typically when we're approving participating TOs as especially approved project sponsors to build projects, they haven't even started the WEC process yet. So Great Basin has already done this. They've already gone before WEC, and we'll end up with north to south of a little over 2,000 megawatts and south to north of a little less than 2,000 megawatts, 1,920 megawatts. Next slide, please. So the becoming a participating transmission owner is very specific, and there's criteria in the transmission control agreement that needs to be met. There's 5 criteria, and of that, Great Basin, in essence, has met 2 of them. One is that they did submit their application to be a participating TO, and the application was posted on the ISO's website for public comment. So where we're at in our 5 criteria is right here. The ISO governing board must authorize the ISO's acceptance of the application. After that, what ends up happening is the transmission owner, Great Basin, will execute a transmission control agreement with the ISO, and then upon that timeframe, they'll go ahead and get FERC approval of their transmission owner tariff along with their TRR, and we'll get FERC approval of the transmission control agreement to allow them to transfer operational control to the ISO. Next slide, please. So Great Basin has met the criteria required to becoming a participating transmission owner. They did go ahead and, well, that's on the next slide. They did go ahead and file before July 1st, and there were no comments received after the 60-day period. SWIP North is the only known transmission project that would be able to provide Idaho wind to California load in the short term. That is one of the criteria that is established by the Integrated Resource Plan that is put out by the California Public Utilities Commission. There's also some economic benefits contributed to the overall value of the project. And Great Basin, because they did not come in as a competitive solicitation project, to provide transparency to stakeholders, they're actually going to be providing the ISO so that we can publish it on our website, what costs have been spent and what the estimation to complete is. That's very unusual for a project to do that. We don't do that on any of our other projects at this point in time, but it will provide the transparency that they are moving forward. The Transmission Development Forum, I believe the board gets reports on that, but the Transmission Development Forum is twice a year, and each one of the participating transmission owners will give a report as to the status of their major transmission upgrades and where they're at. So it's after that, where those documents are posted, we'll go ahead and post these cost items. Next slide, please. So management recommends that the board approve the ISO's acceptance of Great Basin Transmission LLC's application to become a PTO. As I said, it's critical to enable Idaho Wind to reach California consistent with the CPUC system plan. We did post it for the 60 days. The 60 days concluded on August 23rd, and no comments were received by any of the participants. And so with that, next slide. So we're requesting, in essence, two motions for this approval. First, and Roger, please step in if I say this wrong. First, what we need is the board to allow the Department of Energy to be an alternative to the 22.831% that Idaho Power was responsible for the northbound transmission. So that way the December 23 approval is then, we've met all the criteria that was required from the December 23 motion. And then a second motion to approve Great Basin as a participating TO, because they've met all the criteria of an application to become a PTO that's required by the transmission control agreement. So with that, are there any questions?
Thank you, Deb. I'll start out with to find out, are there any questions for Deb from the board members? I then think we'll go to public comment and listen to the public comment, and then we can have a discussion after that. So does the board have any clarifying questions they'd like to ask right now?
Deb, I have a quick question and thank you so much for the overview. This was really great and really appreciate all the hard work you and the team have put into this. With respect to DOE stepping in place for Idaho Power, can you give us a little bit more clarification as to how and why that happened?
Certainly. What ended up happening is that the Department of Energy in the facilitation funding for transmission for throughout the United States picked SWIP North as one of the projects that they wanted to see advanced as soon as possible to increase the transfer capability throughout the Western United States. So it ended up that DOE was able to step in and provide, they're providing a total of $33.1 million. But for that 22.8% share, what's going to happen is that's automatically going to be rolled to a subsidiary of Great Basin Transmission called Great Basin Transmission North. So they'll take on the obligation, and then DOE will fund them for the first 33%. It's anticipated well before they get to that dollar number that Idaho Power will have completed its negotiations with LS Power and be able to go ahead and put before their commission a request to get an entitlement right northbound on the SWIP South and SWIP North lines.
Great, thank you so much. So this is a good thing to move the project forward.
It's most definitely. Otherwise, we have to wait until Idaho Power gets their CPUC commission approval, which is typically 6 to 9 months after they've gone ahead and filed with the commission.
That's great. So good to see the DOE stepping in and being a helpful partner. Another quick question, and I don't know if you know this answer. Do they intend to stay in long-term as partners or phase out once everything then is voted on and things proceed as expected?
No, DOE intends to get out as soon as possible, as soon as there is a off-taker for the 22.8% share.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Deb.
Deb.
Yes, and it's Nell here. I could just chime in and mention that the capacity contract was through the Grid Deployment Office at the DOE that have a number of venues available in terms of helping support transmission. And these capacity contracts are one of the mechanisms that they have available. So we really appreciated that. I think there was just one other thing I should have probably included in my opening comments, was that Deb's presentation focused very specifically on the decision items that we were seeking today in the background there. We have become aware of the concerns, and you've seen the letters now from several stakeholders. There are concerns about the transmission line, but primarily about the out-of-state wind that those resources would be addressing. So we'll be more than happy to speak to those concerns, but we felt it was more appropriate to wait until those stakeholders had their opportunity to address the board directly.
Great, we'll be sure to come back to you. Mary, you had a question?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about the intent of this from the CPUC's perspective on the IRP, whether or not we're still on the timeline anticipated, or have we modified the timeline from their IRP standpoint?
From their IRP standpoint, I don't believe the timeline has been modified. But given the delay associated with, having to move out to September of 24 from 23, it's obviously going to increase the time frame to build the project. But they are planning, Great Basin intends to have SWIP North online by June 1st of 2028. And we'll update that with the CPUC.
Okay, and that's when the win for the RA win was anticipated?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And there and going forward.
Good. Any other questions from the board at this point? Or any further comments from management before we turn it over?
I have just a purely factual question. I've been looking through the memo and trying to find the answer, but I think I'll just ask it. Great Basin, or DOE, and eventually Great Basin, we think, will own 22.831% of the northbound entitlement. Can you remind me what the southbound ownership looks like?
The southbound ownership will be 100% owned by CAISO, the entitlement rights.
Oh, and
so we'll have all the southbound and half of the northbound at this point.
Yes, Deb, it's Neil here. I think just to clarify, the percentage that Governor Bornstein referred to is of the total project cost.
No, no,
It's-
no. I was actually asking about the transmission rights.
Right. Oh, right. Yes, but I mean, the percentage is not the south to north capacity. The percentage you quoted is of the total project. As Deb said, our scheduling rights are all of the north to south and roughly half of the south to north.
Oh, right. Okay. Now I see that 500
Yes.
megawatts of the northbound capacity of entitlement.
Yeah, and I may have misunderstood, but I thought you suggested that our south to north
I
rights.
misspoke. You were right.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, good. Any other questions for right now? All right, Silas, our operator today, can you help us out and line up the people that would like to speak?
If you would like to make a public comment, please press the raise hand icon on Zoom. Or if you are dialed in through our phone line, you can press #2 to enter the comment queue. And it looks like we have a hand up already. Dan Sakura, your line is unmuted. Oh, I apologize. Dan just put his hand down. Dan, if you wanted to make the comment, do you mind putting your hand back up? Okay, thanks so much. Now I can unmute you.
Great. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Chair Shorey and governors, my name is Dan Sakura. Thank you for the opportunity to provide public comments. I am a Hapa Yansei, a Japanese American, 4th generation. I'm a descendant of 3 generations of survivors of the Minidoka War Relocation Center, which is where Japanese Americans and Alaska Natives were wrongfully incarcerated by our own government during World War II. I'm advising the Minidoka Pilgrimage Planning Committee, which is a nonprofit based in Seattle that organizes the annual pilgrimage to the Minidoka National Historic Site, a unit of the National Park System designated in 2001 by President Clinton. In 1942, the government sited Minidoka near a rail line because it needed to transport nearly 13,000 Japanese Americans from their homes on the West Coast to a remote part of southern Idaho. Today, Minidoka is located in a dense transmission network because of its proximity to the rail line. We have been fighting LS Power starting in 2009 when it sought approval to build the SWIP line over Minidoka National Historic Site. Unfortunately, Idaho Power built a power line over Minidoka, the Valmy Midpoint power line. We have been working with our local partners throughout southern Idaho to preserve this sacred site as a place for learning and healing. We have been fighting the proposed Lava Ridge Wind Project, which is one of 3 projects proposed on federal land in southern Idaho managed by the Bureau of Land Management. The other 2 are the Taurus Wind Project and LS Power's Salmon Falls Project. In terms of the CAISO board decision today, we encourage CAISO board to defer action on the PTO for 2 reasons. First, in July, Great Basin Transmission petitioned FERC for a declaratory order relating to cost recovery regarding abandonment and pre-commercial costs. As noted in CAISO's response to FERC, LS Power's petition is premature and is out in front of the CAISO process as well as the CAISO board. FERC has yet to rule on LS Power's petition. A decision on the SWIP North PTO at this point would be premature until the issue is resolved in FERC by a final non-appealable judgment. The second reason we encourage the board to consider deferring action on the PTO is that we believe the board should take a look before you leap approach to transmission planning. The SWIP North line is predicated on wind energy in Idaho. The projects have encountered significant local opposition. For example, the Lava Ridge project is currently, the Idaho Attorney General has filed a lawsuit challenging FAA's determination relating to airspace. The Taurus project is subject to litigation in IBLA. And the third project, LS Power Salmon Falls, is not yet justiciable in federal court but it has triggered Twin Falls County moratorium on renewable energy projects. Please don't play shoot, ready, aim with $950 million of California ratepayer money. We believe that it makes sense to defer action until your next board meeting in December on the PTO, until you can get a better analysis of the legal, regulatory, policy, and electoral risks associated with wind energy from Idaho. With regard to the proposed change of the existing conditions for Idaho PUC, we encourage CAISO to keep that condition, given the intense level of public opposition to both the Lava Ridge Wind Project, the SWIP North, and the two other wind projects in southern Idaho. This would be prudent action on the part of the board. For reasons stated in my letter, the Minidoka Pilgrimage Committee outlines a tremendous opposition across Idaho to wind energy. Several years ago, the government stopped a bridge to nowhere in Alaska. Without the 3 wind projects, this transmission line would be a line to nowhere. Thank you so much for considering my views. I know this is unorthodox. You probably don't hear from Japanese Americans, farmers, or ranchers, but we encourage the board to consider that these comments reflect a very high level of opposition, and encourage the board to consider these views. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Sakura. I appreciate that. I think rather than trying to have staff responses as we go to each speaker, we probably should have all the speakers first, and then we'll go ahead and take staff responses to some of the points that are being made. I also failed at the outset, and I should have mentioned, if you could shoot for keeping comments in the 3 minutes or so range, we'll be flexible, but hopefully we'd like to get through everybody if we can. So with that, Silas, back to you.
All right, just as a reminder for attendees, if you'd like to make a comment, please press the raise hand icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or #2 on the phone. Moving to the next in queue, Dean Diamond, your line is unmuted. You should be able to go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you guys for the opportunity to speak before you. I am just a local farmer out here in southern Idaho. My farm actually borders up and is part of the Minidoka internment camp that Dan mentioned a minute ago. I have been involved quite a bit with the SWIP line, and I would like to reaffirm Dan's strong opposition or pointing out that there is a lot of strong local opposition to the SWIP line and to the wind projects. I think that it poses a really significant risk that the wind projects most likely aren't going to be built, I think, and if they are built, they're not going to be anywhere near on the scale that these developers are hoping. And I also want to point out that Idaho is continuing to grow at a mass amount. So as Idaho continues to grow, our power needs are also growing greatly. So as more and more power needs are made, there's going to be less and less power available to transmit out of state. I think that the SWIP line they have bought up, you guys probably know all this, but they have bought up a 40-year-old project that Idaho Power started back in the 90s. And they have not gone through all the proper steps. They haven't gone in and secured the local permits. They haven't looked at all the Section 106 requirements and stuff and met all them obligations. So there's a really high likelihood that while it may not totally stop it, it is definitely going to really cause some long-term delays while they work out all these issues and make it proper. I'd also encourage you not to rush into it with Idaho Power not getting their approved before the PUC. There's also an overlap with this with their Gateway West project. And I can see why Idaho Power is having trouble negotiating out the terms, because the BLM is going to have to address the overlap that Swiftline has with Idaho Power's Gateway West project. And I think it's pretty premature to for the Department of Energy to trump Idaho Power's negotiations by providing the money and basically saying, hey, you guys either do this or else Idaho Power, you know, isn't going to be a part of it. I again want to reaffiliate the opposition. I just can't stress enough how much this is being opposed out here. And so with that, I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to any questions that you may have for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diamond. Any questions at this time from the board? Otherwise, we'll wait and have a.
I actually have a question.
Go ahead, Severin.
You want to take it now? I'm not sure. So what's before the board now, if I understand correctly, is a change to a project that was already approved. And it sounds like both Dean and Dan are raising issues that I would have thought we would have heard, when was that? A year and a half ago or whatever, when we originally approved it.
December.
Yeah. December. Okay, last December. And so I'm just curious, did we hear this from you then? Or is this, why didn't we, if we didn't?
Can I address that, please?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. First off, you got to remember we're just a bunch of local farmers that, and you know, people that are concerned, and all these public meetings and stuff on SWIP line took place 40 years ago. And there, as far as in Idaho, people don't even know about it. And yes, I did hear a little bit, and we have provided comments where we knew that we could, but we're not power experts and stuff. We're regular blue collar workers that go to work every day, and we don't know about a lot of this process and a lot of what's going on. And where this SWIP line, like I say, it was Idaho Power project back in the 1990s, and that's when all the public hearings and stuff were held on it. A lot of people don't even know that they're trying to reactivate it. I think it's really underhanded of them, a way to do it. They're basically circumventing the public input process, because there is a lot of reasons. But yeah, the main reason you didn't hear anything from us before is we didn't know what the process was, and we didn't know that we had the right to even raise these issues. So did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diamond. Silas, let's go ahead and have the next person.
Dan Sakura had entered the queue again. Dan, you've been sent the prompt to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you so much. And Governor Borenstein, thank you for your question. My clients have submitted comments through the transmission, through the CAISO process about the really the high level of opposition and risk related to the Lava Ridge Wind Project. So we have participated in that. But to Dean's point, you know, we have been fighting the Lava Ridge Wind Project through the federal permitting process through the BLM, literally nonstop for 3.5 years. And so, you know, apologies, we have not raised these issues in a timely fashion to the board. With regard to the specifics of the SWIP line, it is noted that they have a conditional notice to proceed. They don't have a real notice. They don't have an unconditional notice to proceed. The other thing I would encourage is to consider the electoral risk. Former President Trump has pledged to cancel or block wind projects, and these are located on federal land. In addition, he has stated his intent to rescind unobligated federal money for clean energy projects, including through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act. So, you know, there is a significant risk for CAISO, for California ratepayers, and we would encourage the board to consider this in December, to look into this and reconsider this in December.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sakura. Okay, back to you, Silas, to see if we have more commenters.
Okay, if anyone would like to make a comment, please press the raise hand icon on Zoom or #2 on the phone. John Arkush has entered the queue. John, your line has been unmuted. You can go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to comment in agreement with Dan and Dean. I'm a local rancher here. These energy projects, the Lava Ridge in particular and Taurus affect me directly and our ranching operation, plus another 60 ranching operations or more. They're multi-generational family operations. We are fighting tooth and nail, and we will not stop until we stop these projects. We've been involved in the process where we knew we could be from day one. We hired legal counsel. We have filed appeals. We have participated every way we knew how. If we missed a comment period, it was because we didn't know about it. And I, for one, don't think that the federal government should be funding utility projects for private benefit, private companies. And I think that you're getting way ahead of yourself if you permit this today or vote for this today. And like Dean, I'm just a rancher, and I don't know the processes, but I would really encourage you to take a hard look at this before you jump into it, because I don't know if you're going to have any power to send to California from Idaho. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Arkush. And I just want to mention to all of the speakers, we really appreciate the time that you're taking to participate in our meeting. And we recognize that it can be quite challenging to understand when to show up and when to speak. And we do appreciate the fact that you're participating with us today and helping educate us. So with that, Silas, are there others that would like to speak? Oh, I apologize. I'm seeing Mary. I'm sorry. Your little hand up there in the corner is in a part of my screen that I can't see it.
No, that's okay. I just put my little hand up, Commissioner Shore, because I'm curious if Idaho Power is speaking today.
We did receive a letter from Idaho Power, and it is part of our record today. I don't know if anybody from Idaho Power is speaking. Silas, do we have anybody from Idaho Power lined up?
Just as a heads up, if you want to make a comment today, please press the raise hand icon on Zoom if you're from Idaho Power and would like to speak. Not seeing anybody in the queue.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the letter that was sent to us does indicate that they remain interested in this project, but that the representations from our staff are accurate, that they have not filed at the PUC in Idaho. They don't have to come to California. It would be the PUC in Idaho. And they continue to negotiate with the project developer. I think that was the information that was in their letter, but that they are still supporting this project.
We actually just had one hand go up from Jared. Jared Ellsworth, you've been sent the prompt to unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Hi, yes, this is Jared Ellsworth from Idaho Power. Yeah, we did send a letter, and we are supportive of the project. We believe that it will provide, the SWIP project will provide a lot of joint benefits between the California ISO and Idaho Power in terms of exchanging energy and moving power back and forth, and really look forward to continuing to work with the California ISO. I don't have a lot to add other than the letter, but I would be happy to answer any questions that that the governors would ask of me.
Did you have anything, Mr. Ellsworth, that you wanted to say in response to some of the comments we've been receiving from the ranchers and the representatives of the Japanese internment camp preservation?
I would probably defer to LS Power on most of those comments, as they're the ones developing like the Lava Ridge project and the Salmon Falls project. The Taurus project is also being developed by a different developer in the area, and there's other wind projects throughout Idaho that could source this. I believe that the California ISO staff has worked on some of due diligence around other wind projects that could source the line. So I would defer to them on those comments. Otherwise, I would note that yeah, we're continuing to work with LS on agreements associated with the project. We aren't delaying it because of Gateway West. I think that was one of the comments being made. That isn't really part of the delay. It's really just working through the agreements and getting it ready to put in front of our commission.
Thank you. Mary, you have a question?
Yeah, just a follow-up question for Jared. Jared, is to your knowledge, is Idaho Power your CPUC, your RA, is this project part of your IRP?
Yes, we evaluated this as part of our IRP in the last go around, and identified some benefits associated with the project overall. So our IRP is run internal to Idaho Power. It's part of our staff. I'm actually part of that group. I'm the director of that group at Idaho Power. And so we evaluated the project as providing some capacity to Idaho, in particular winter benefits, where we can buy power from the southern power markets in the winter time when the desert Southwest and California tend to be long power. We have a shortness of power in Idaho and the Pacific Northwest during those peak winter times, and so that's our primary business case for having an interest in the project, is being able to access those power markets during the winter time. And so that's what we identified via our IRP process as providing benefits. And so that's what we're intending to file with the commission once we reach agreements with LS Power on this project overall.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Okay, Silas, back to you to see if we have others that would like to speak.
We have Mark Milburn in the queue. Mark, you've been sent the prompt to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Chair Shorey, Vice Chair Bornstein, and governors. This is Mark Milburn with LS Power. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this agenda item for SWIP North today. First, if I may, I did want to address some of the comments you heard so far. First of all, Mr. Sakura indicated that he's been fighting against SWIP since 2009 because it was located across the Minidoka National Historic Site. We actually worked with the sponsors of the site, including the National Park Service, to move the line off of the Minidoka site back in 2010, and it remains off of the site today. Also, Mr. Sakura mentioned high opposition to the SWIP North line in addition to the wind projects, and we're not aware of that high opposition, just an attempt from those against the wind projects to link SWIP North to that. So that's I just wanted to mention that. I also think it's important to address that the commenters thus far haven't acknowledged that in BLM's preferred alternative for the final EIS for the Lava Ridge Wind Project, they significantly scaled back the project to address the concerns raised by different stakeholders in that process, including a 50% reduction of the project footprint, a 40% reduction in the number of turbines, a 10% reduction in turbine tip height. They affirm no impacts to existing grazing rights or grazing practices. And with regard to the Minidoka National Historic Site, they moved the nearest turbine out more than 9 miles from the visitor center. That's sort of like looking for the Golden Gate Bridge from Candlestick Park. So as a result of that, the BLM's record of decision is expected to come out very soon to approve the project. Now, back to SWIP North, which is what this agenda item is about, and I appreciate you hearing the comments, but I think it's important to note that in the current generator interconnection queues that can access SWIP North, there's actually over 50 gigawatts of renewable energy projects being planned in those queues, including over 13 gigawatts of wind. So this demonstrates that the SWIP North doesn't depend on the success of any one single generation project. And likewise, these projects don't depend solely on SWIP North. They have access to other markets outside of CAISO. So focusing on SWIP North and what it does for California, management highlighted last year in your December 14th meeting that SWIP North provides significant benefits for electric customers in CAISO. First, SWIP North, as has been mentioned today, it's the sole project that can meet the CPUC portfolio requirement to deliver 1,000 megawatts of out-of-state wind. And CPUC reaffirmed that need back in February. Second, in addition to this policy-driven need, management has recognized a number of other key economic and reliability benefits that tag along with the approval of SWIP North. First, the bidirectional capacity on the line provides additional market opportunities for northbound energy flow, which could include EIM and EDAM transactions, as well as delivery of excess solar to the Pacific Northwest, and help reduce renewable curtailment in California. It also provides improved RA by providing access to diverse out-of-state resources with varying diurnal patterns, particularly during daily peak periods, which will help mitigate load shedding. It's also a new path that's parallel to COI. So it provides increased reliability and resiliency during wildfire events or extreme heat-related events. And it's been shown to provide tens of millions of dollars of congestion relief per year on COI. It's also important to note that by accessing out-of-state wind, it can reduce greenhouse gas emissions on a $1 per megawatt hour basis more than California solar because it generates more during the higher priced evening hours. One other benefit of the project is the advanced development stage of SWIP North, which helps mitigate against additional schedule slippage and cost slippage, and then coupled with DOE's role, that helps keep the project on schedule. That's in comparison to a new project that is conceptual and is starting from scratch. I also want to remind you that for this particular project, half of it is already built. Half of it was paid for by Nevada and was placed in service and is operating today. So in closing, I'm pleased to confirm for you that with DOE's participation and subject to the required regulatory approvals, the SWIP North project could begin to advance to the construction phase if you approve the draft motions that are presented to you today. So thank you for your time, and I'll be available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milburn. Do any of the board members have any questions for LS Power? Joe, your hand looks like it's up.
Mr. Milburn, can you speak to the extent to which the DOE funds are committed at this point?
Yes, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Governor, in September, we signed a definitive agreement with the Department of Energy to secure that commitment.
Thank you for that clarification.
Severin.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. You said that half of this line is already built. Do you mean SWIP South by that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Not
that's what I
that
meant.
half of the SWIP North has not, there is nothing on that right of way right now?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Milburn? Thank you very much then. And let's see, Silas, do we have others that would like to talk?
We've got Ethan Stonecipher in the queue. Ethan, you've been sent the prompt to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Hey, good afternoon, Board of Governors. My name is Ethan Stonecipher. I'm here on behalf of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 1245, and it's more than 27,000 members in Northern California and Northern Nevada. IBW Local 1245 urges the CAISO Board of Governors to approve the draft motions. There are a multitude of benefits that California stands to gain from the construction of this project. Additionally, other states who have significant projected electrical needs will benefit from this project. Multiple large transmission projects are planned in the western U.S. in the upcoming years, and with the large amount of labor needed to complete these projects, we have a need to train a new and upcoming workforce to meet these demands. The construction of the SWIP North transmission project will allow organic growth of future workers to meet the expected demand increase. The approval of this already permitted and designed project will allow the ISO to achieve the CPUC portfolio requirements regarding wind generation. It will also allow the Pacific Northwest to access any excess California solar generation. Serving as a tie line between Midpoint Substation in Idaho and El Dorado Substation in Nevada, SWIP will require 285 miles of a new 500 kV line to be constructed, and will be utilizing the existing One Nevada and Desert Link transmission lines. In closing, we ask that you approve the draft motions. The electrification goals of California require urgent, positive action. As demand increases, we must meet these challenges head on and ensure that CAISO is prepared. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Stonecipher. Does anyone have any questions? The IBW? Thank you for your participation today. Okay, Silas, do we have some more?
One more reminder to attendees, you can press the raise hand icon if you want to make a comment, or #2 on the phone. I'm not seeing any further hands in the queue at this time.
Okay, well, thank you very much for all of your comments and participation today. I'd like to turn it back over to Neil and Deb. We had a number of comments. Would you all like to respond?
Yes, thank you for that, Chair Shorey. There are a few comments I would like to make just to respond. Some of them I will point to also some of the comments Mr. Milburn made. I think first and foremost, I have to provide a bit of context and just reiterate that the ISO's transmission planning process is based off of the Public Utilities Commission's portfolios for required resources. As Mr. Milburn noted, it is not tied to any specific generator, and that's a very consistent trend in our resource planning. Mr. Milburn already noted the over 13 gigawatts of wind resources that could be competing for access to the SWIP North transmission line. While some of those projects are being advanced by the same party developing the SWIP North transmission line, the transmission line is not tied to any one particular or group of or subset of those wind farms. So that's what we key off of. There was a condition for the CPUC to reaffirm its interest in the out-of-state resources, and that's what our application is based on. Now, that being said, we do appreciate Mr. Milburn's comments about the specific concerns around the wind farms themselves that were being noted, but we do have to reiterate this project and our capacity interest is not tied to one specific wind farm. I think the other comment I had to make was also just to clarify the issue around the cost recovery application at FERC and the ISO's comments that to some extent there might have been a cart before the horse. You will recall at the very beginning of this session, I reiterated that the ISO has no cost commitments to the project until the transmission sponsorship agreement has been executed, filed, and approved by FERC. And we did participate in the cost recovery application by LS Power, or its subsidiary, I forget who it was submitted, whose name it was submitted under. But we were very clear about that, and that to us was the very important consideration, that the initial board approval of the project with conditions did not in itself expose the ISO and through the ISO our ratepayers to cost recovery responsibility at that time and until an approved agreement had been approved by FERC. So the sequencing was a little unusual that called on us to then make sure that that was a clarified situation, and that was recognized. But that was our concern around the cost recovery application. So we do not have a concern with the cost recovery application having gone through its process and be ready, subject to parties actually being contractually bound to the project itself. So I think given the other comments you've heard about the right-of-way issues, and we as a matter of course are not involved in direct routing decisions, I think those actually address between ourselves and the comments made by Mr. Milburn address the comments we've heard. I also do want to pass along though our thanks to the people who expressed their concerns, but as I said, the ISO does not engage on permitting issues directly.
Thank you, Neil. Roger or Deb or Elliot, did you have anything further you want to add on this?
I do not personally at this point. I think Neil has covered the issues expected and also expressed my sentiment with respect to the commenter.
I will say, having listened to all of the commenters, one of the challenges for any intervener, any participant, is the sheer number of forums that are considering this project and the associated wind resources. And from listening to the comments, it's clear that the BLM process is well underway and is attempting to evaluate a number of the points that have been made to us this afternoon. Obviously, the PUC, to be frank, sends us the direction that they have determined that wind resources in Idaho are to be part of the California future. And we've had a number of presentations indicating that this is the project that can achieve that goal. So I think from my perspective, at least, we're trying to figure out the costs and the mitigation of any risk associated with that, which we will continue to conscientiously try and do as we further participate and analyze what's going on at FERC and these other forums that are considering all the issues. Severin, I see you have your hand up, or it looks like it.
Yeah, I guess I found the clarification. So the capacity of SWIP North is about 2 gigawatts. And Neil, I think you said, and I think the speaker from LS said that there's 13 gigawatts something. Is that there's 13 gigawatts actually in planning around midpoint?
Well, let me just clarify. Yes, the total capacity is around 2,000 megawatts. The a portion of that, of course, goes to NV Energy. The ISO share is approximately 1,000 megawatts north to south and approximately 500 south to north. The Idaho Power interest that the DOE is addressing is the additional about 500. I'm saying about because I didn't pull the specific, the exact numbers up in front of me. So the ISO entitlements would be 1,000 north to south, all the way from midpoint down through to Harry Allen, and 500 south to north. And with Idaho or the DOE initially with the remaining 500 south to north. And there is about 13, we're aware of about 13 gigawatts of wind farms that are in the Idaho Power, PacifiCorp, and NV Energy queue that could access midpoint.
Okay.
So that's why we're saying that the project, there is other interest there, which is why this line to us is not tied to a single wind project or a very narrow subset of wind farms.
And how big is Lava Ridge, or proposed to be?
With the latest adjustment, I should turn that over to Mr. Milburn. I don't know if he's still available.
I don't need an exact number. I'm just trying to get a rough idea.
Deb, would you have that number right now, the latest?
I don't, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Severin. Does anyone have any other comments? Roger, I did want to touch bases with you. Did you have any comments on the FERC proceedings, or you're comfortable with the way they've been characterized today?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, good. Let's see. With that, any further discussion on this item?
See that Joe has this, Governor.
I'm sorry, am I missing a hand?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes, go ahead, Joe.
I was wondering if Neil or Doug could speak to what the material effect of a delay in a vote by the board might be.
It's Neil here. I'll start with that. A big part of our concern of trying to keep the project moving on time was that we were aware that LS Power has made a number of commitments on their own to move forward with major equipment acquisition. And it's always a concern that those could lapse if we're not able to keep sequencing moving forward properly. I would say that concern's grown as they have continued to get a financial arrangement commitments in place from suppliers for more and more of the equipment. I don't know if Mr. Milburn's still available to come back on to speak to that, but that is the largest concern, is that these days major equipment has become in huge demand, and if you fall out of a queue, equipment manufacturing queue, it's more challenging getting back in, which will drive up both delays and cost. Mr. Milburn I don't know if he's still available.
Silas, could you check and see if Mr. Milburn is still connected?
Yes.
Yes,
Yay.
I'm here. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Neil said it well. We do have a number of commitments or pending commitments for major equipment where we've locked in pricing and we've locked in schedule for delivery. Many of these items are long lead items where they might have 3 years before they could be delivered. And so if there was a delay, undoubtedly all of those would open up and we would have to face likely price increases and likely at the mercy of whatever slots are available in the future. So I'm not sure what it would do to the project schedule or the cost, but they would both slip.
And it's Neil here. Well, Mr. Milburn's on the call. Perhaps he could just clarify the earlier question about lava. I was just wanting to double check, because when he mentioned earlier about the project being reduced in size, to be blunt, I wasn't sure I had the most recent information. So I don't know if Mr. Milburn could speak to that.
I can. My understanding is that the preferred alternative provided by BLM now limits the project size to 241 turbines. So turbine sizes could range from 3.5 to 5.5 megawatts. So I'm just going to say roughly 1,000 megawatts.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Silas is indicating Mr. Sakura would like to make an additional, one additional comment.
Mr. Sakura, your line is unmuted.
Yes, thank you so much. First off, there are two types of land in Idaho. There's federal land owned and managed by the BLM, and there is virtually 100% certainty that any permitting decision by the BLM with regard to Lava Ridge, Taurus, or Salmon Falls will end up in federal district court and will be litigated for many years. The second type of land in Idaho is privately owned land, and I'm just going to be perfectly blunt. The Lava Ridge Wind Project and the Bureau of Land Management has poisoned the well for renewable energy in southern Idaho. The CAISO staff may wish to consult I believe it's an Argonne Wind Atlas for zoning. And you can start to see in southern Idaho, the counties starting to zone anti-renewable energy. So you could end up with a bridge to nowhere. And I will acknowledge that Mark Milburn is correct. In 2009, LS Power relocated the SWIP line away from Minidoka. We appreciate their flexibility. We have been fighting the Lava Ridge project for over 3 years, and we will continue to fight it until the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sakura. And to all of the speakers who are opposing the project, I think we clearly got the message that you are in this for the long haul. So thank you for participating today and giving us your viewpoints. Is there any further responses from the staff to anything that's been said, or are we ready to move on and evaluate the motions?
It's Neil here. I don't believe so. I think, we've made the point clear about the planning being tied to overall wind development, not a particular project. So we do appreciate the comments, but I don't think we have more to add on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Okay, with that, Roger, I think we have two motions that the staff is asking us to consider today, so I'll turn it over to you.
We do, and I will take them each individual with individual votes. So the first motion is for the Department of Energy commitment. It's moved that the ISO Board of Governors revise the conditions approved at the December 14, 2023 meeting to allow the first condition be met by the Department of Energy funding in place of Idaho Power's involvement, with the other three conditions remaining unchanged. And we have a motion for that.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary and Angelina. And we'll take the vote. Vice Chair Bornstein.
Aye.
Governor Edo.
Aye.
Governor Galitova.
Aye.
Governor Leslie.
Aye.
Chair Shorey.
Aye.
Thank you, governors. That motion passes. And with that, we'll move on to motion number 2, which is regarding the PTO application. Move that the ISO Board acceptance of the application of Great Basin Transmission LLC for participating transmission owner status, conditioned on 1, Great Basin Transmission LLC executing the transmission control agreement, and 2, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission accepting a transmission owner tariff and transmission revenue requirement for Great Basin Transmission LLC, as set forth in the memorandum dated September 27, 2024. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Thank you, Governor Glitzford, and second.
Second.
Thank you, Governor Leslie. Vice Chair Bornstein, your vote, please.
Aye.
Governor Edo.
Aye.
Governor Galitova.
Aye.
Governor Leslie.
Aye.
And Chair Shorey.
Aye.
Thank you, governors. That motion passes as well. And so I believe, Governor Shorey, that other than the informational reports, that completes our agenda for the general session meeting. And not to be taking over on you, but since I'm talking already, that's just a question of whether there's any questions by the Board of Governors as to the informational reports that have been submitted.
I do want to add my thanks to all of the participants in today's meeting. You helped to educate us, and I think we understand the challenges as well as the potential benefits of this project, and we will continue to monitor it very closely. I also wanted to ask the board members if you would all agree to take a 10-minute break after this meeting, and then we will reconvene in closed session.
Great.
With that, I think we're adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Chair Shorey.